Welcome once again to Constel English. This is your host, Menchi Pascual. In the last episode, we talked about outlining as a guide in developing students' compositions. Today, we shall take up the topic revising students' compositions. In the earlier episodes on the process approach to writing, we learned that revision is one of the recursive stages in writing. Now, we shall see the place of revision in a formulation cycle. Revision is the initial stage of the reformulation cycle, and the other stages are editing, proofreading, and rewriting. Are you familiar with the term reformulation? Well, reformulation is a valuable technique which makes revision an integral part of the writing process. Basically, it involves these activities: re-examining the whole text, analyzing the elements used in the text, ordering, reordering, connecting, and even changing the topic of some elements. Apparently, reformulation consists of distinct activities such as 1. Revision, 2. Editing, and 3. Rewriting. When you hear the word revising, what things come to your mind? I am sure you think of words such as reviewing, re-examining, editing, proofreading, evaluating, reformulating, or recreating of text, reshaping or remolding, and many other related words. All these terms lend themselves to revision of students' compositions. In this episode, we shall dwell on this, revising students' compositions. In a writing class, the sequence of the lesson normally follows this pattern. First, selection of topic. Second, preparation for writing and other pre-writing activities. Third, writing the first draft. Fourth, revising, editing, rewriting, and proofreading. And finally, marking compositions. As in the diagram, revising is the fourth phase in the writing lesson. I'll tell you more about this when we return. Please stand by. Welcome back. Let's go back to our topic of revising students' compositions. We have here with us today Dr. Andrea Peña Florida and Ms. Jo Mariano. Now, we'd like to ask you, how do you find the task of correcting your students' compositions?
Well, actually, I find correcting my students' composition overwhelming.
Yeah, overwhelming.
Well, in my case, correcting my students' composition is really difficult. Very difficult.
Very difficult.
Yes.
Why is this so?
You see, I've formed the habit of correcting errors in grammar and mechanics at the same time. After checking its composition, I get overwhelmed with all the red marks I made. The worst thing is I can't get into the content of my students' composition anymore. And I realize that I'm doing the revision work myself.
Yeah, I see. And Dr. Andy, in your case?
Well, in my first few years of teaching, I practically corrected all my students' errors in grammar, as well as in organization, content, and mechanics. Imagine how really difficult it was correcting 150 papers in one sitting.
Oh, goodness.
No, really, I find that quite difficult. But you should have seen how I corrected their papers. You should have seen how I bled my students' papers to death.
Oh dear. But there has to be a better way of doing this. What might you suggest? Is there an alternative method? Sure.
Yeah, I think I need to change my way of correcting my students' composition.
Yeah. What might you suggest,
Well,
Dr.
that's
Andy?
right. In my case, I really don't want to splash red ink all over my students' compositions.
We're thinking of another technique the teachers might use. What would you suggest?
Okay, let me see. How do I correct my students' compositions? First, I scan through all the papers. Then I classify them as follows. Very good for all those papers that are well written. Good for those with errors, but these errors don't impede communication. Fair for those that have many grammatical errors but are still comprehensible. And poor for those that are really incomprehensible.
Right.
Then, the next step I do is to read all the papers more carefully this time, while at the same time writing marginal comments. You see, I've learned not to write comments such as improve, too broad, specify, and the like, because they don't mean anything to our students.
Ambiguous.
Instead, yes, I write more explicit directions like, or more explicit comments like, your use of quotation to introduce your composition is very good. But who wrote it? You see, you don't just have to say or give the quotation. You have to give the source too. Okay. Or describe your mother. Or I like the way you describe your sister, something to that effect.
Yeah.
Or give a more vivid word for nice, or rock, or sad. Now you see, there are other alternative forms of assessing students' papers.
And what are these, Dr. Andy?
Yes. One is peer feedback. I pair off my students and then ask them to evaluate each other's work. There are, of course, other alternative forms of assessment, such as protocol analysis, journal writing,
Yes.
okay, portfolio assessment, and learning logs.
Learning logs. That all sounds very interesting. So thank you very much, Dr. Andy and Joe, for joining us today. And I hope their suggestions were very helpful to you.
You're most welcome.
Now, let me ask you this question. Do you also have the same habit of correcting errors in grammar and mechanics more than errors in content? Indeed, we need self-discipline and forbearance in responding to our students' compositions. Refraining from correcting these errors is not easy, but we must respond to the content of our students' work. First, this is the major concern of the writer. Only after doing this should we take a look at the surface features of the language used, such as grammar, spelling, mechanics, and others. Let's go back to the question, how do you conduct your revision sessions with your students? But before you answer this question, let's visit a classroom where you will see the students writing their formal themes.
Class, it's almost time. Please pass your compositions now. Yes, Ryan.
Mom, we have not yet finished.
Yes. Mom, can I pass my composition later?
Mommy, too.
Okay, you may pass your papers later.
Do you correct errors in the same manner? Notice that the teacher focused on errors in grammar and mechanics more than on content. This is called the direct correction technique. She didn't give her students a chance to think of the words themselves. Let's look at the next scenario.
Class, I've already checked your compositions. What I want you to do now is to rewrite your compositions on the next page of your formal theme paper. Lilia, can you please come in front and help me distribute these papers? Okay. Please note my corrections when you rewrite your work. Do you understand, class?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh my! This does not look like my composition anymore. It's full of red marks, full of corrections. I feel awful about this.
My composition looks the same as yours, Jake, full of red marks. It's no longer my composition. My original ideas are no longer here.
How would you have felt if you were one of the students? Would you have felt the same way too? I guess you would have. You have just seen a typical problem in revising compositions. Who did the revision? You're right. The teacher did the revision. And what did she focus on? She focused on grammaticality and not on substance or content. Before I take you to another classroom scenario, let's have a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome once again. Let me take you to another classroom scene.
Class, I've checked already your papers, your first drafts, and I want you to rewrite them on the formal theme book, on the original page, okay? Now, on your paper, I've written comments and suggestions found on the margins. Please read through them very carefully. And if you think you need to see me about your paper, feel free to do so. Are you ready with your revision now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, here are your papers. Rama, will you please distribute the papers of your classmates? And DJ, the formal theme book. Okay, I'm going to give you 30 minutes to write them on the original page of your formal theme. Is that clear, class?
Yes.
All right, time is up. Please pass your papers now. Come on, ready? Pass them forward. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have them now. Class, I'm done evaluating your papers, and I'm very happy with the result of your work. Your compositions have improved a great deal. Okay, I'm going to give you back your papers so that you can see how you improve a lot. Okay? Kindly pass it. Are you happy about the results of your papers?
Ma'am, we're indeed very happy about the result.
How different was the first scenario from the second? Apparently, the students looked happier and more fulfilled because they did not see frustrating marks and corrections in red ink on their compositions. Instead, they saw comments written by the teacher who focused more on content than on errors in grammar, spelling, and mechanics. When we focus on content, we give the students a chance to include more of their thoughts and ideas in a certain topic. Now we shall talk more about revision. What do you understand by revision? Revision is a writing activity which involves re-examining the concepts and ideas incorporated in a given composition. It involves deletion, addition, or expansion of ideas. Yes, revision focuses primarily on concepts and ideas in the composition. Let's visit a classroom once again and see how a revision session is conducted by a teacher.
Class, I have here a rough draft written by students like you, and I would like teacher to please read the first paragraph of this text.
I am a student from Holy Innocents High School. The school that I came from is a Christian school. I like it very much. Unfortunately, I have to leave it. I am 16 years old, a very tall boy. I am a boy who born on the farm. My father is a farmer. Therefore, I have to tend to a tree every morning before I came to school.
Okay, is there something wrong with this text, class?
Yes, ma'am. A lot.
All right, so what you're going to do next is to improve on this text using the 5 guide questions. All right, Roma, will you please read these questions on the board?
1. Do the ideas make sense? 2. Are the ideas clearly stated? 3. Do they relate to each other? 4. Are there enough details to support the main ideas? And 5. Is the presentation of ideas and details logical?
All right, what you're going to do now is have a pair work, okay? Get a partner and talk about how you can improve this text based on the 5 questions on the board. Is that clear, class?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, do your work now.
What did you notice about the 5 guide questions given by the teacher? They focus on concepts, ideas, and organization, don't they? The activity focused on the improvement of their compositions, applying the rhetorical principles of unity, coherence, and cohesion. Correction of grammatical and mechanical elements is not the primary basis for revision. What then is the difference between revision and editing? Revision is concerned with the fluency and unity of ideas, while editing is concerned with the accuracy of surface features in the language. Editing involves correcting parts of writing which are affected by sentence completeness, phrase and word choice, punctuation, spelling, paragraphing, and neatness. If revision is the initial stage in the reformulation cycle, then editing is the final step. This includes rewriting and proofreading the revised draft. In editing, we should encourage our students to have a second look at their final draft and guide them to look for language features that need correcting. Editing can be done after a day or two for the students to edit their work on their own. Editing focuses on the accuracy of the spelling, punctuation, paragraphing, word form and usage, the neatness of handwriting, or the accuracy of the typewriting. It is our responsibility to guide our students in revising and editing their drafts, while it is their responsibility to revise and edit their own compositions. When we see our students having difficulty with their writing tasks, We should show that we are concerned, be ready with our support and assistance, encourage our students to rise to the challenge of their writing tasks, and be gentle in giving our honest feedback or criticism. We shall discuss feedback as a basis for revision and editing in the next segment. Stay with us. We'll be back shortly. Welcome back. In real life, writing calls for a reply, and this means that when we write, we expect to receive a reply or a response. Unfortunately, in the classroom, you might not feel very glad to read the compositions of students full of red marks and corrections. Can we possibly create a lifelike, interactive classroom? If we do this, our students will have more fun learning how to write. Our students will be actively involved not only in writing, but also in giving feedback to their peers. Would you like your class to be more effectively involved in writing? In an interactive writing class, we can share with the students the responsibility of revising and editing their own written work, because they get feedback not only from us, but more importantly, from their peers or classmates and friends. Feedback may be oral or written. And there are several ways of giving feedback, and these are: 1, peer feedback; 2, conferencing; 3, self-monitoring; 4, written comments and suggestions. What is peer feedback? Peer feedback refers to the comments and suggestions given by students, classmates, or peers. Our students' peers are good sources for drawing out feedback to improve compositions. Also, peer feedback is done in team writing. Let's watch this classroom scenario where cooperative or team writing activities become good sources of feedback.
All right, class, stand up. Let's move around, and we're going to have a game in order to group you properly. Okay? Are you familiar with the game, The Boat is Sinking?
Yes, ma'am.
Then arrange your chairs, put them at the side. Are you ready now? Okay. The boat is sinking. Group yourselves into 2. Right? The group is sinking. Group yourselves into 3. Okay, you don't have any group. You can join that group there, the third group. Okay? Now pull your chairs. Make a group now. And I'm going to give you your writing task. Okay, this time I want you to think of a name for your group. Have you think of your group's name? Now, your next task is you're going to write a letter addressed to the next group, your next group here. So your group will write a letter to Roma's group, and Roma's group will write a letter addressed to Peter's group. And Peter's group will write a letter addressed to DJ's group. Is that understood, class? Okay. Is there any question? Now, I want you to get a sheet of paper and write your letter now. You can ask the other group, okay? Ask any question about the other group.
What should we include in the letter?
Well, maybe about basketball game.
Yes, let's talk about the PBA games. That's my favorite game.
I like that game too. Let's write about it.
Whose group are we going to write?
Preferred, we will address a letter to the group next to us.
How do we call them?
Excuse me, what's your group's name? Oh, Kika. They said their group name is Kika.
I'm going to write. Say the things that you wanted to write.
Okay, let's start. Dear Kika, we like the PBA very much. We like the PBA games very much. How about you? Do you like it too? Yours, ADR.
Don't you think a letter should have a date?
Oh yeah, I forgot. Abby will please write the date today.
Okay.
May I read your letter? February 13, 1998. Dear Chica, we love the PBA games very much. How about you? Do you like it too? Yours, ABR. Do you think like is a correct word?
I think it's like without a D because we're still interested in the PBA games, aren't we?
Don't you think we need to explain why we like the PBA very much?
I think so. Let's explain why we like the PBA game. Listen, the PBA game because they're exciting. They're fun to watch.
Abby, write it down. Please add. I like Alaska team because they play the game fairly.
You've seen a classroom scenario where students wrote their letters. In the process of writing, they exchanged feedback. Jeffrey and Sunny realized that they needed to add more ideas to the letter. In cooperative writing, students give as well as receive feedback. This collaborative effort makes feedback a built-in component of the writing environment. In cooperative writing, the team members support each other, cooperate with each other, and share with each other ideas and comments which serve as feedback. Thus, peer feedback enhances their written work. In groups, our students pool ideas and skills, and thus they share a sense of accomplishment after completing their writing and revising tasks. The free and relaxed atmosphere is conducive to the exchange of information and insights. This atmosphere, in effect, greatly improves writing and revising by students. In peer feedback, students who are less proficient are helped by those who are more proficient. Peer feedback also includes peer correction, and this is further explained in the teaching support material. In the next segment, we shall discuss conferencing as another method for getting feedback, so stick around. We'll be back shortly. Welcome once again. Let's take up the next technique, conferencing. What is conferencing? Conferencing is a valuable tool in composition writing. It enables students to identify problems and find solutions to them. Let's watch how a conferencing session is done in the classroom.
Class, tomorrow we are going to have our conferencing session. I want you to bring the following. Write it down. First, your self-monitoring checklist with responses. Second, the list of your specific writing problems. And third, your original compositions. Is that clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, if you don't have any questions, will you take note of the following schedules for tomorrow? Roma? Okay, see me tomorrow at 7:30 to 8. Peter, or I should say BJ. BJ, please see me 8 to 8:30. Michelle. Michelle, 8:30 to 9 o'clock. And Liselle, 9 to 9:30. If that is clear, let's call it a day. I'll see you tomorrow.
Excuse me, ma'am. Good morning.
Good morning, Roma. Good of some common time. Please have a seat.
Thank you.
Okay. May I have your self-monitoring checklist, your list of writing problems, and your last composition?
Here they are, ma'am. Actually, I've got two main problems in my writing work now. First, how can I make paragraph unified? And how can I write my topic sentence clearly?
Well, I can see that on your paper. Okay. But let me help you. You see,
What did you observe? First, the teacher gave instructions the day before the conferencing session. Second, she fixed her student's schedule. During the conferencing session, she initiated the dialogue and allowed her students to express what they felt about their writing difficulties. Next, she offered some help on how to overcome difficulties in writing. The real value of conferencing lies in the opportunities it provides for the exchange of ideas and the negotiation of meaning between the teacher and the student. These are the benefits of conferencing: the articulation of writing problems, the search for solutions, the challenge to think critically, the probing of meanings, and the disclosing of implications. Our next topic will be feedback based on written comments and suggestions. Specific written comments and suggestions are more effective than comments such as fair, good, needs more work, or excellent. How is correction of student writing done? There are two ways of writing comments on your student's work. One is by underlining the words, phrases, or sentences which need reworking, and then writing comments on the margin nearest the part of the text with composition problems. Another way is by assigning numbers to the elements that need correction. Writing comments on the margin of a draft makes it easy for students to revise their compositions. Written comments provide a permanent record, which enables students to review their work. Remember, written comments should be honest. However, we must be tactful in giving these comments. After writing our comments, we insert the symbols that signal correction. But use these signals only when your students are familiar with them. Here are some of those symbols. Our students themselves are sources of feedback. They do this by reflective thinking. Our students can be trained to think critically during the process of writing their compositions. Let's watch another portion of a revision session where the students are guided by the teacher to monitor their own work.
well, I'm glad you had a good night's rest, because today we are going to have another revision session. I'm giving back your compositions But this time, I want you to do the following. First, read through your composition as though it were not yours. And second, read it again, but this time, respond to it. Is that clear? Please distribute this. And then how are you going to respond to it? Melissa, please distribute the questionnaire.
Pleasure, ma'am.
Thank you. Answer the questionnaire.
An alternative would be for us to collect their first drafts, deliberately keep them for about a couple of weeks, then return them to the students unmarked. The teacher reads the drafts and lists errors. Afterwards, the teacher constructs questions that would stimulate the students to think critically about their compositions while doing their self-editing activity. Let's go back to the classroom and watch the rest of the lesson.
You have a copy of this?
Yes, ma'am.
I would like Roma to read the instructions and BJ to read the items on the sheet. Roma, please.
Dear students, this SMCQ aims at identifying your writing needs and revising your compositions. Please respond to each item honestly. Your responses will not have anything to do with your grades in English. Your teacher, Mrs. Gutierrez.
Thank you, Roma. BJ.
Instructions. Put a tick mark on the space provided for corresponding to each item, if it applies to you. 1. I need to use appropriate words and expressions to make my written work understandable. 2. I need to use appropriate cohesive linkers and transitional devices to make my ideas flow smoothly throughout the text. 3. I need to know how to select relevant details and illustrations to make my content substantial and complete. 4. I need to know which of the methodical patterns is suitable to develop my topic. 5. I need to know how to start and end my written work interestingly.
Okay, so, is there anything you would like me to explain? If there are no questions, you may go ahead with your work.
This is only one technique used by the teacher. You also may encourage your students to devise their own self-monitoring instrument. When we return, we shall share with you a letter from a young teacher from Mindanao. So stay with us and we'll be back shortly. Before we bring the Stella lesson to a close, I would like to share with you a letter from a newly hired teacher of English. Here's the letter. Dear Menchie, I am a newly hired teacher of English in one of the public secondary schools in Mindanao. During my first month of teaching, I was very enthusiastic about my job, but as time passed, I got overwhelmed by the voluminous and time-consuming tasks of correcting and editing my students' formal and informal themes. I have no more time for my boyfriend. How can I alleviate this burden? Sincerely yours, Dindy. Dindy's problem is common among teachers of English. Do you have the same problem? I hope you'll find Teacher Joe's teaching strategies useful. For more teaching tips, reinforcement, and enrichment activities, please refer to the teaching support materials. We now bring the Stella lesson to a close, but before we part, let's review the basic principles in revision. First, read the whole composition and think about its content before writing comments and suggestions. Second, look for strengths as well as weaknesses and then give honest comments or remarks. Third, Make sure that your students would be able to read and understand your written comments and suggestions, and that they are familiar with the editing symbols used. Fourth, work out your own teaching strategies for providing activities for your revision session. Revision is the responsibility of your students, not yours. The main task of the teacher in a revision session is to help students improve their written work in terms of content or substance, and not merely in terms of grammaticality, punctuation, and mechanics. In our next episode, we shall talk about integrating writing with other skills. This is your host, Menchie Pascual, saying bye and happy teaching and writing.
Either be content-wise or skill-wise. Fifth, reading instruction can be integrated with listening, with speaking, and with writing. Sixth, the reading-writing connection offers a lot of instructional possibilities owing to the nature of these two language arts with print language as their base. Well, I do hope you got a lot of insights from today's episode. Next time, we shall talk about testing reading. Once again, this is your host, Ruth Alido, saying goodbye, happy teaching, and happy reading too.